Okay. Good evening, curious minds. A very warm welcome to all the first timers and a big shout out to the patrons of Curious Minds community. Just a reminder this meetup Zoom session is being recorded and tomorrow I will upload it on my YouTube channel, the link of which will be shared in the meetup chat. So today we are discussing long COVID with emphasis on brain fog. So long COVID, you can call it like a aftershock of pandemic. COVID haulers or long COVID sufferers are those who continue to feel symptoms long after the days or weeks that represent a typical course of the disease. So in this talk, I will lead you through. I will travel back in time when it all started. We will understand first of all the superpowers of SARS-CoV-2, the virus behind the pandemic. This will help us to make sense of its lingering effects, which is long COVID. We still don't know a lot about long COVID. Research is ongoing. There are several hypotheses which we will discuss. There are some cure for long COVID patients. A lot of clinical trials are undergoing. So we will talk about all that. And we will get started soon. But remember, curiosity is the key to unlocking the wonders of science. So don't hesitate to ask questions or share your thoughts after the talk. Before moving into today's talk, let me introduce myself. I am a cancer immunologist, educator, and science communicator. And CMC, which is Curious Minds Community, is part of Curious and Creative Lab. Check the website to learn more about what me and my team is doing to communicate science to masses and make learning fun for everyone. So, we also have a book meetup, and this month we are discussing The Song of the Cell, an exploration of medicine and the new human by Siddharth Mukherjee. It's a very interesting read. So, if you are interested, please join us there. So, let's start. So, globally, as of 5th July, there has been 767 million cases, confirmed cases of COVID 19, including 6.95 million deaths reported to WHO. And there is 13.46 million vaccine doses which has been administered. These numbers are likely vast underestimates given the lack of reliable reporting of testing and deaths from the virus. So, where it all began. So, the onset of first recorded case in Wuhan was in 8 December 2019. And soon after, 11 March 2020, WHO defined COVID 19 as a pandemic. And just in October 2020, we had this number of cases and deaths. So, what is the reason? There are thousands of different coronavirus which inhabit the planet. 4 of them are responsible for many of our common colds. 2 others already triggered alarming outbreaks of disease. In 2002, we had SARS-CoV-1, which killed more than 770 people worldwide. And in 2012, we had MERS, which is another coronavirus, taking more than 800 lives. So SARS burned out within a year. MERS still lingers. But another member of this family, which is SARS-CoV-2, caused 6.95 million deaths. What is the reason? One of the reasons is the rapid spread of global connectivity. As you can see in this graph, air travel is rapidly increasing. And here, 2020, the air travel is, we are so connected to everyone. And so this virus spread so fast. So Akiko Iwasaki, she is a virologist at Yale University, and her lab is working hard to find cure for long COVID. She said that coronaviruses similar to SARS-CoV-2 had circulated through human population for millennia, but none had caused this kind of devastation. Some cousin viruses like SARS and MERS were deadlier than COVID-2, but they had been rapidly contained. So, what features of the interaction between this SARS CoV 2 and human cells enable this virus to precipitate a global pandemic. Let's learn about the superpowers of this virus. So, this virus is of the size of 100 nanometers, which is only visible by electron microscope. The virus looks like this under an electron microscope. So, this is a cross section of the virus. If we cut the virus into half, we will observe this. So, these yellow proteins are the spike proteins. So, most of you already have heard these terms spike proteins, mRNA. And so, spike proteins are present in the outer layer. And these spike proteins are through which the virus attaches to our cells. So the virus will crawl to your cell. It will enter inside through the nasal chamber from the nose or from the mouth. And that's the entry point. And from there, it will travel to the cells and find the ACE receptor. So ACE receptor is the one through which it enters the cell. And it will enter the cell and it will deliver its RNA, which is the genetic material which is present inside the cell. So it's fascinating. Viruses are actually like a speck of dust. So they are living and non-living at the same time. So when they are outside their host, they are called non-living because they cannot replicate themselves. They cannot divide themselves. They need a host for this part. So that's why they need the host machinery to make their progenitors, to make their copies. That's what viruses do. All the different viruses have the same mechanism. So this is how it will find its location. It will attach to that cell and then release its genetic material inside the human cell. When it releases the genetic material, it also sends other proteins which are required to make the whole virion. Virion is the progenitor or the daughter of this mother virus. So the host cell, which is the human cell, will follow the instructions from the virus and will work for the virus to replicate it, to make it in millions of copies. And so once this process is done, the cell bursts itself. Millions of viruses come out from that one cell, and then they repeat the process again. So these million of viruses which come out, they will find another cell, find the ACE receptor, attach to it, send the genetic material, and repeat the process again. So this is what every virus does. So what is special about this SARS-CoV-2? These are the special features which I've highlighted here. Was they can transmit even when they are asymptomatic. So most of the time viruses only they are only contagious when they are showing symptoms. But this virus could transmit even when the person was not showing any symptoms. So asymptomatic transmission and pre-symptomatic transmission. So pre-symptomatic transmission, even before showing the symptoms, some people were carrying the virus and they had no symptoms at all. That's the asymptomatic transmission. It was exponential growth. It was rapidly dividing. It was contagious. A single person can infect 3%. It was unpredictable and mysterious. Mysterious deadliness was there. So what other features are there? One by one we'll go. So these are the features, how it was enabling the transmission. And then, so virus, this is the list of different viruses, and here is the SARS-CoV-2. Generally, viruses' genome is shorter. Why it is important? Because as the viruses replicate, that as the viruses is forming its daughter copies, its genetic material is copied. And sometimes when this copy mechanism is happening, certain errors are included in this copy. And what error does, sometimes it provides more superpower to the virus, and sometimes it decreases the power of the virus. So with SARS-CoV-2, because it has 3,000 around genes in the genome, whenever it was replicating, there were chances of many errors coming into the replication process. So many errors means many mutations. And that we saw. There was initially um, alpha, then delta. Delta strain was very contagious, very deadly. And then it was Omicron, which was again a deadly. And what happens when they are replicating and there are some advantageous mutations, and these advantageous mutations over time, they dominate because they are the one who have all these superpowers to transmit. And the less aggressive variant will be lost in transmission. So this one will take over. So all these superpowers made this SARS-CoV-2 uh, a serious illness, and still we are seeing this. Now let's understand from the immunological standpoint, because most of you will say that, okay, we what's our immune system doing? Is our immune system not recognizing this virus? And I know you all have some idea about why immune system was not recognizing, but we have some important data from the last 3 years of research which I wanted to share and which is very interesting. So what happens is this SARS-CoV-2 reprograms the infected cell. It changes the cell and it makes the cell believe that the virus is not a foe, it's a friend. So like a cancer cell, so cancer cell does the same thing. So this is doing the same kind of tricks to the immune system, and immune system is not getting that trigger alarm that this is a foreign particle which has entered in our system, and we should activate the other immune cells to kill this thing. It's not doing that. And how it does that? So you remember the spike protein, which is helping the virus to enter the human cell. This spike protein has something like called glycan, which is sugar chains, which is also present in human body. So immune cells are not able to recognize this thing because they consider it as a normal sugar chain which is already present. So this is not recognized. The first evasion happens by this mechanism. So the entry of the virus is not recognized by the immune cell. So first trick it has played. The second is we have two different immune system. First is innate immune system and the second is cell dependent. So the first innate means it will get activated and it doesn't have to recognize anything. Anything foreign comes, it will recognize the surface of it and it will get triggered. So these are called toll-like receptors. So TLR7 is the one which is very efficient to recognize anything which enters in our body. And it is the first alarm. It will ring the bell for other immune cells. So what was seen that this TLR7 was not being activated. And in most of the patients who were getting acute SARS-CoV-2, it was found that this TLR7 was inactivated, mutated, or not functional. So that that group was getting acute response. The second is TLR7 activates interferon gamma response, which is the second immune alarm. So what this is showing, this is clearly depicted by this figure. Virus, so these interferons are proteins. So when the cell gets the signal, they are being formed in the body. So this virus was actually stopping the formation. So this is the second way how it was changing our immune system. So it was not allowing the cell to form interferons. And then after that, it has done all its function and it is doing its replication, forming millions of copies killing the cell, the first cell where it get the entry. The copies are being released, the virus particles are being released, infecting other cell. And when this is happening, a lot of human cells are being killed in this process. So when a cell dies, it also sends another signal to the immune system that something is not wrong. So when many cells die, the alarm is raised high. So a lot of immune cells hear this alarm and they come running to attack the virus. And this is where the cytokine storm happens. And this is where the things go wrong for us. Because when a lot of immune cells come attacking the virus, they are also attacking the normal human cell. So this is why they just fill the lungs with water and fill the lungs with all that dead immune cells and dead cells already there, and that's why the oxygen saturation goes down and a person has to take external oxygen or go to ICU and acute COVID illness happens. So this is where I'm showing you the two response. The first one is the mild one, and the second is the cytokine storm one, which is the uh, the the acute one. So if in your first system interferon remembers to trigger the immune system, it will kill the virus. You will be cured after 2 weeks. Cured in the sense the symptoms will not be there, the active symptoms. But in the other case, the cytokine storm, and it can lead to multiple organ failure and many other devastating illnesses. So now, by understanding all this, what is happening, the superpowers of SARS-CoV-2, the immune cells, how they're reacting, now let's understand what is long COVID, the aftershock of pandemic. So it is estimated that 65 million or more people are still living with the often devastating effects of long COVID. And the incidence is estimated at 10 to 30% of non-hospitalized cases, which is milder ones, and 50 to 70% of hospitalized cases, and 10 to 12% of vaccinated cases. So vaccine does have its effect, but it cannot have 100% effect on the long COVID symptoms. And this is shocking. The longest bout of SARS-CoV-2 infection recorded to date was a patient in the UK who tested positive for COVID-19 for 505 days until her death. So, so it's another interesting aspect of virus illnesses is that, which is seen in history, is that after 5 years of the Ebola virus outbreak in 2016, the virus actually re-emerged in people who previously had Ebola virus in 2021. Similarly, people who previously had West Nile virus infection with chronic symptoms still had positive RT-PCR test after 6.7 years after recovery from acute illness. So whether SARS-CoV-2 can also reactivate and retransmit after several years of dormancy, we still not know about this fact. So understanding this now, let's understand a little bit more about SARS-CoV-2, what WHO is defining and what we understand. Like why this slide is important is because for a long time, long COVID was regarded as a disease of mind. Like people were thinking you're overthinking, this is not a true illness. And it was not regarded as a true illness, or and if you will not regard it as a true illness, there will be no funding for it, there will be no research, and there will be no seriousness regarding it. So that is why it was important, and recently, just recently, it is regarded as a disease, and there is funding, and now there is serious research done on long COVID. So long COVID or post COVID condition can affect anyone exposed to SARS-CoV-2, regardless of age or severity of the original symptoms. Earlier, it was considered that only patients who had acute who had went to hospitalization and are still alive are the ones with long COVID. But this is not true. People with moderate or mild illness, mild COVID-19, are also showing long COVID symptoms. And WHO defines it as the continuation or development of new symptoms 3 months after the initial SARS CoV 2 infection, with these symptoms lasting for at least 2 months with no other explanation. And this definition, they have revised it. This is because it is ongoing for 1 year, 2 year in some patients. So that's what I was mentioning. It was well understood that only acute COVID patients can have long COVID. But now we know that long haulers who survived severe acute SARS-CoV-2 infection are most likely to be men older than 50 years with lingering tissue damage and scarring. And people with long COVID after a less severe infection are most likely to be younger women aged 36 to 50 years whose acute infection has triggered adverse physiological responses. So this is one thing. And then mild COVID-19 patients are at risk and their symptoms get resolved within 1 year. And for people who had adverse, they are generally for 2 years or more. Still, we are seeing the symptoms of long COVID. So now let's understand the symptoms of long COVID. So there are over 200 symptoms being reported for long COVID. These include things like fatigue, shortness of breath, memory impediments, gastrointestinal symptoms, and many different organ systems are being involved. And why many organs are being involved? So, if it is just the nasal entry and lungs, why these multiple organs are being involved? Because, as you remember, I was mentioning that this virus has needs ACE2 receptor to enter, and it is seen now that these organs also have ACE2 receptor, and this virus can enter these organs. So now let's go one by one and see what are these symptoms and what is the pathology. So in heart, cardiac impairment, myocardial inflammation. So inflammation is when your immune cells are active and immune cells release these inflammatory cytokines. And inflammation is one of the criteria for multiple diseases. So if inflammation is there, it will slowly tear off your normal cells. So, myocardial is the layering of the heart tissue. So, if there is a low level of inflammation still persistent, it will not, your cardiac cells will not be able to perform super well. So, how you can know it? You will feel chest pain or palpitations, and this is heart. So this list is not exhaustive. This is just an idea. If you want, the symptoms varies from person to person. This is just a general criteria, general idea about what happens. So lungs, abnormal gas exchange will happen because if it is acute, there will be scarring in the lung tissue, and this can lead to abnormal gas exchange, and you will have persistent cough or dyspnea, which is like shortness of breath, difficulty in breathing. Then your immune system. So it is seen that SARS-CoV-2 can activate certain viruses which are already present in our body but are dormant. So in our body, several viruses, like if you had herpes simplex infection sometime in your point, you will be carrying the virus in your body. And this virus will be dormant. And whenever your immune system is compromised, this virus reappears. So this is like 90% of the human population have herpes simplex virus. And there are EBV viruses which are present in the body, which are dormant. And it is seen that SARS-CoV-2 can reactivate these viruses, and it can cause autoimmunity. And there is another thing, MCAS, which can be triggered. And so in case of pancreas, diabetes or pancreas injury can happen because of SARS, because of long COVID. These are the long COVID symptoms which can happen. And then gastrointestinal tract is actually most often seen in people. It's been um, the microbiota is disturbed because of SARS-CoV-2, and it leads to gut dysbiosis, which is inflammation of the gut. And there will be IBD kind of conditions, uh, flatulence, abdominal pain, nausea. These kind of symptoms can happen. So I will show you like why this happens. There are several reports which have shown that viruses persist in these organs from like till like months and months. So I will show you the images just in a while. And so there's neurological systems. So neuroinflammation, reduced cerebral blood flow. So the blood flow is important for our brain to function well. So if there is a blood flow issues, the brain will not function well. And dysautonomia is a very serious issue seen in long COVID patient. What is that? It is a disturbance of the autonomic nervous system. So SARS-CoV-2 actually affects our autonomic nervous system. And autonomic nervous system is controlling our breathing, our heart. And so there is like some people gets high or low blood pressure. So that is also a symptom of autonomia. So the symptoms will be like cognitive impairment, fatigue. The things you were easily able to do before COVID are like now troublesome. You are feeling fatigue after that, disordered sleep, memory loss. And these are the things like eye tingling, nerve tingling. These are also the symptoms of neurological disorder. And then organ injury, uh, lungs, kidneys, and liver, there can be disturbances in that. So blood vessels, reproductive system, all these organs have ACE receptors, and the virus can enter, and these can change. But this is just a generalized list. No one shows all the 200 symptoms. People have different symptoms, different kind of order of symptoms. Some are only feeling fatigue. So fatigue, headache, and memory loss or brain fog are the most common symptoms. This loss of taste is another one which is very common. But these symptoms can happen, and I have seen videos of people with long COVID, and they have range of symptoms, and some are very severe. So now let's understand this a little bit more. So 1 year after the initial infection from SARS-CoV-2, it increases the risk of cardiac arrest, death, diabetes, heart failure, pulmonary embolism, and stroke. This was studied by US Department of Veterans Affairs database. So this is from the US Department of Veterans Affairs database. Additionally, there is a clear increased risk of developing MECFS, which is a chronic fatigue syndrome, and dysautonomia, which I just mentioned, the disturbance of the autonomic nervous system. So 6 months after breakthrough infection, increased risk were observed for cardiovascular conditions, coagulation and hematological conditions, fatigue, neurological condition, and pulmonary conditions in the same cohort, same group of people. So here you will see this is given in the hazard ratio. So let me explain you a little bit what it means. So hazard ratio is the ratio of how often an event occurs in one group relative to another. In this case, people who have had COVID-19 compared with those who have not. So this is the list. Now we know that post-COVID, there is an increased risk of all this. And this is not to make you anxious or make you fear, but this is just a good thing to know that this thing can happen. So you will learn more about the symptoms. You will not ignore the if your body is showing a certain kind of symptoms. So you will have that in back of mind that it can be a long COVID symptom and you should have a consultation with a physician. So don't get alarmed by these slides because this is just a generalized overview of things happening. And we all have to remember that each individual is so different, but this is what is the current norm that we now know. So these all data is from 2022 later studies and 2023 recent studies. So just 1 year of study, 1 year of data. So now what is happening, why we are getting these long COVID effects, and why multiple organs are being affected? So there are several theories. We still don't have a clear answer, but there are several theories. So we will go one by one into each theory and understand. So the first theory is immune dysregulation. The second is microbiota disruption. So the as I mentioned, the microbiome is very important, and now we know that microbiome and our brain has a connection. So it has a crosstalk. So our microbiome is so important because the byproduct of the microbiome are responsible for our brain function that we know now. Earlier it was not clear. So the SARS-CoV-2 changes the microbiota and it can affect your brain function directly. So that's the another theory. The third theory, it is activating the autoimmunity, it is activating the dormant viruses. That is the third theory. The fourth theory is blood clotting and endothelial abnormalities. So when I was mentioning that when our immune cells gets activated too much, they secrete a lot of cytokines. And when they die, they form coagulations, they form clots. So these clots can get trapped in the arteries and can cause the blood clotting. So that's another thing. And when this blood clot travels to your heart, it can cause heart attack. And when it can travel to your brain, it will cause stroke. So this is a serious problem right now with a lot of long COVID patients where they see that suddenly a person is just fine, develops a heart attack or a stroke. So this is the reason, the fourth theory of long COVID. Then the dysfunctional neurological signaling. So the autoimmune system, in our body we have two different nervous system. One is autonomic and one is autonomic, or the second is parasympathetic. Autonomic or sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system, as the name suggests, it is doing all the autonomic functions for you. It is responsible for breathing, it is responsible for all the autonomic functions which is happening unconsciously in your body. And the parasympathetic is the rest and digest system, which calms your body down. So SARS-CoV-2 is affecting the autonomic nervous system, and that is responsible for your breathing, your heart rate, or and your maintaining your blood pressure and all that. So these are the 5 theories which we have right now. So if we go into a little bit more detail, I will go later. So, okay, so these studies are from published in Nature and Lancet, which are the um, very prestigious research journals. This is from the um, autopsies done on 44 COVID-19 cases. Autopsies are done after a person dies. So they took like 84 distinct anatomical locations. So for 84 distinct organs from the body, like different parts, all the different parts they took and they examine it. So they did this technique, which is called RNA in situ, where they section the tissue. They will cut the tissue into very fine slices and stain it to find the presence of COVID-19. So they do it by staining the RNA of the SARS-CoV-2. RNA is the genetic material of the SARS-CoV-2. And these asterisks and the hashes are showing the presence of the virus. So this study showed that after even 230 days of infection, SARS-CoV-2 was present in um, in different locations of these people. So many more studies followed that, and these are these studies and their major findings, which showed that SARS-CoV-2 was present in different sites. One study was shocking to me, where it showed that pregnant women who got COVID during pregnancy, their babies actually had SARS-CoV virus particles, which is shocking. So here I want to clarify that when I say SARS-CoV-2 particles, it doesn't mean that it is active. There is a presence of SARS-CoV-2, but it is not active infection. When we say presence, it means its genetic material is there, but the virus is not replicating. So virus is not making its copies, but it is present. So this this level of presence of a foreign particle in our body activates our immune cells and raises the inflammation levels in our body, which is not good for us. That is why we are concerned about these levels of SARS-CoV-2 in different organs. So gastrointestinal is the very crucial organ for us. We all know about that. And this study was done in the gut of IBD patients. And they saw that after 7.3 months, SARS-CoV-2 was still present in the intestine of these patients. So this yellow thing here tells you about the SARS-CoV-2 presence. And these patients, they were having IBD, but they showed after getting COVID-19, they showed long COVID symptoms of fatigue, memory loss, memory issues, loss of smell, abdominal pain, and headache. So they had these symptoms and their gut had the virus, even after 7.3 months in average. So these studies are actually quite shocking, and they have raised the alarms in the scientific community, and people are finding cure to get these virus out from the system. So in short, if I sum up all the studies which were done here, we see that there is a persistent virus in our body, and this is the first theory for long COVID. So we have persistent virus in our brain, which is specifically in the olfactory or the smell region of the brain, and also in the cognitive region of the brain, which is the frontal lobe, which is the front part of your brain. And then there is persistent virus in lung, persistent virus in blood, which can cause low grade fever. And one person when I was doing the research for this long COVID, I came across this person who had fever for like 1 year. Continuously, she was getting fever. And fever is just a response to active immune system. And immune system is active. That means there is some kind of foreign object in the body. And now we know that there is a persistent virus. Even though the virus is not active, like virus is not replicating, the virus is alarming our immune system. An active immune system is very costly because activating immune system is an energy efficient process. It takes energy. And if our energy is if we are spending our energy to keep our defense alarmed, we are not spending energy for important task of repair, and other functions which are needed, like reproduction and repair, and all that will be stopped for a while because all that energy is going in your immune system to keep it active. So That's why long COVID has these headache, fatigue, and all that functions, all the symptoms which we see. So I will go a little bit faster because we have just 15 minutes and I want to give you time to ask questions. So this was the data from the UK Biobank. So UK Biobank is a very interesting um, study. They do they have created this biobank. So they, before COVID even, so they collect the data from their citizens, brain MRIs and all that serological data, blood data. So they had the controls of these patients and when of these people, and when they when they got COVID, they also did the MRI and the same test again. So now they have before COVID and after COVID of the same person. And this is the first study which showed the longitudinal effect. Longitudinal means you are tracking the same person before and after. So this study was very, the first study and very interesting study because none of the other country has this kind of data. So this study told us a lot of things. So I will sum up this study here, which is this was done in 785 participants. And this study showed that the brain mass of the people were decreased. So these were the controls and these were the cases, a percentage change in the different regions of the brain. So every person, this is the olfactory tubercular. So there was a decrease overall in the cases afterwards. So there was a decrease in the total brain thickness, and thickness tells you um, the potential of the brain. So there was a cognitive impairment and all that by the study. I'm not going into too much detail here, but yeah. So now, brain fog. There is virus in the brain. The brain is changed. It is smaller. It is thinner. Certain regions of the brain are changed, and that causes brain fog in some people. Like not directly related to brain changes, but brain changes are an important part of that. So, sluggish thinking, confusion, forgetfulness, lack of mental clarity are the symptoms. There are there are four main ways of COVID-19 which can attack your brain. Direct brain invasion. So when it goes from the nasal cavity, it can go in the brain region. Blood vessel injury, immune response is not active. So in our brain, we have a specialized immune cell, which is called microglia. Microglia gets activated and there is low level of inflammation, which can change your brain. And then cellular dysfunction. So this is what, and Stanford actually correlated it with similar things it is seeing as chemo brain. So after chemotherapy, there is also this kind of excessive inflammation causes brain fog, and similar thing is happening into COVID related brain fog. So research is going into this area to understand there if there is a link, then there will be a cure for chemo brain too. So now, after all this, you must be thinking, is long COVID permanent? No, long COVID is not permanent. In some people, there is gradual recovery, but it doesn't go to zero. Till now, we have not seen that it goes to zero. But in people who are suffering from after 2 years of having long COVID, for those people, the treatment is necessary, and that is the focus of the research community right now. So, what treatment options we have right now to understand whether it is autoimmune disorder, autoimmune activation? Uh, to understand autoimmunities, there is a test developed uh, which was not present before. And then, if you have a persistent virus infection, it is suggested to take the physicians are suggesting for this drug, which is ritonavir, which is an antiviral drug, and this is helping some people but not all. The other treatment options or for to manage the brain fog are exercise, which we all know exercise can change the brain. There is neuroplasticity with exercising, getting adequate sleep. Sleep helps to build new connections, and it helps to clear out old damaged part of the brain. Eating a well balanced diet. Go for this Mediterranean and DASH diets, which are like low salt diets. The other treatment options, this is the recent one, which is developed by Tel Aviv University, which is unique hyperbaric oxygen therapy. They are doing this therapy, which is very interesting approach to do it. They are creating they are giving this mask to people to do 100% oxygen, and then they go down a little bit, so it triggers the brain stem cells to regenerate the damaged region. So this is a very very new technique. um I don't know it's FDA approved, but they are doing it. There's not no harm in this HBO2. It's actually also in US somewhere. It's in US, Israel, and Dubai right now. And if you want to learn more about it, the YouTube video by the person who has developed it is available. And then there is cognitive training. So now let's see, these are the clinical trials which are ongoing. A lot of clinical trials are ongoing for long COVID based on the 5 hypotheses. So these are all the clinical trials. So this is the last slide. Post-acute COVID syndrome, long COVID, is really a condition that can affect anyone who contracts COVID-19. Everyone should be concerned about this. So the idea is not to get alarmed. Listen to your body. If you see any changes in your body, then wait for 2-3 days. If the symptoms are persistent, consult your doctor about it, and the doctor will guide you. And this talk will be uploaded in the YouTube channel. So I will encourage to subscribe so you will know when I'm uploading another talk. And there are many other talks which you can go back and listen to. We have now a CMC membership plan. So if you are interested to be a part and patron of the community, please support us. And you can do this by just by signing up and supporting us. So thank you. And now the meetup is open for questions and discussion.